The chronological guest. Aditi lived her life in the quiet hum of the archives, surrounded by the scent of vinegar and dust. Her career was dedicated to preserving the memories of others, ensuring that nothing was ever truly lost to time. One rainy Tuesday, she decided it was time to curate her own history. She brought a heavy box of personal photographs to her workstation, the glow of her high-resolution scanner the only light in the dim room. The process was rhythmic and soothing until she reached the photos from 10 years ago. In a snapshot of her 21st birthday, she noticed a blemish. It was a tiny gray smudge in the far left corner of the frame, standing near a lamppost. At first, she dismissed it as a thumbprint or a chemical error in the film development. She wiped the glass of the scanner, but the smudge remained on the digital preview, a blurry shape draped in what looked like a heavy, outdated overcoat. Curiosity turned into a prickle of unease as Aditi progressed through the years. In a photo from 5 years later, taken at her graduation, the smudge was no longer a smudge. It had moved toward the center of the background. It was clearly a person now, though their face remained a textured void of gray grain. The figure stood behind a row of cheering students, the hem of that same long, heavy overcoat brushing against the grass. Aditi began to hunt for him. She pulled images from 3 years ago, a vacation in the mountains. There, in the reflection of a cafe window, was the figure. He was closer now, his form becoming sharper, more defined. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face into deep shadow, and his hands were tucked deep into the pockets of his coat. He wasn't looking at the scenery, he was looking at the camera. He was looking at her. By the 2-year mark, the figure had bridged the distance from the background to the midground. In a picture of Aditi at a local park, the man in the overcoat stood just 20 feet away, partially obscured by an oak tree. The texture of his coat looked rough, like coarse wool, and his presence felt heavy, even through the lens of a decade-old memory. He seemed to be walking toward the foreground, a slow, deliberate march through the years. Aditi's heart hammered against her ribs as she opened the folder of photos from last year. She lined the digital files up in a row, creating a terrifying flipbook of a stalking that spanned a decade. With every click of her mouse, the figure grew larger. He moved from the corners of the world into the sacred space of her personal life, his gait unchanging, his destination becoming increasingly clear. She reached a photo taken only 6 months ago in her own apartment. She had been testing a new camera lens, snapping a picture of her cat in the hallway. In the deep shadows of the open bedroom door behind the cat, the figure stood. He was no longer a smudge or a reflection. He was a solid, towering presence in a charcoal gray overcoat, his boots resting on her hardwood floors. Breathless, Aditi realized the figure wasn't just in the photos, he was using them as a doorway. Each shutter click was a step forward, a bridge across time. The archive wasn't just a record of her past, it was a countdown to her present. She looked at the final file in her digital queue, a selfie she had taken only an hour ago, right here at this desk, to test the scanner's tethering software. She clicked the file. The image bloomed onto the high-resolution monitor. There she was, looking tired but smiling, unaware of the horror behind her. And there he was. The figure was standing directly behind her chair. His face was still a blur of gray static, but his hands were visible now. They were long, pale, and spindly, reaching out from the sleeves of the overcoat. Aditi felt a sudden, icy weight on the back of her chair. The air in the room grew heavy with the smell of old wool and stagnant time. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. On the screen, in the frozen digital moment of an hour ago, the figure's fingers began to tighten on the fabric of her seat. In the silence of the archives, she heard the faint, rhythmic sound of a heavy coat brushing against the floor.